The families of those who are missing cycle through many emotions. Sometimes they may feel anger, despair, and sadness, and at other times a sense of hope may wash over them. All these families want are answers and justice for their loved ones, and sometimes these unsolved crimes do come with a happy ending when those who have disappeared reappear. Number 5. 72-year-old Gab Song of Torrance, California, was well loved by his family and liked by all those who met him. Gab was the proud father of famous choreographer Mike Song, and in February of 2022, he decided to take a quiet hike in Frazier Park. Little did Gab or his family know that this would lead to a bizarre unsolved missing person case, and an investigation that would go on for days. On February 15th, Gab said goodbye to his family and headed out of his home in Torrance, California, headed for Frazier Park. Frazier Park is a small, tight-knit community of around 2,500 people who live along the Tejon Pass area, leading to great mountain ranges and stunning natural beauty. While the community is tight-knit and small, many hikers and tourists pass through the area hoping to hike the many trails. Gab was one such hiker, and according to his family, he planned to hike solo up Mount Pinos. Gab had never hiked this area or trail before, but had extensive experience in the outdoors, so he felt that he was prepared for what laid ahead of him. Unfortunately, Gab could not have anticipated that a random snowstorm would fall through the area, obscuring the trails and paths before him, and making conditions much more treacherous. As the day went on, Gab's family became concerned that they hadn't heard from him, and filed a missing person report. Both the Kern County Sheriff's Office and Ventura County Sheriff's Office responded, bringing with them helicopter crews and snow vehicles. As the first 24 hours since Gab's disappearance came and went, investigators knew that the likelihood of Gab surviving was becoming slimmer and slimmer. Still, they pushed on through the snow, hoping to find any sign of him. His family took to the media, begging for any information about his disappearance. The community of Torrance looked on, watching as if one of their own was listed as missing. And then 2 days later, a miracle happened, putting an end to the short unsolved mystery of what happened to Gab Song. 2 days later, on February 17th, at around 12:26 p.m., the Kern County Sheriff's Office called off their search and announced that Gab had been found alive and well. Gab explained to the authorities that he had lost his way walking along the trail and continued walking eastward until he happened upon a farm. A kind stranger took Gab in, giving him a hot cup of tea and somewhere to rest. Gab was reunited with his family following a medical assessment and is just happy to be in a familiar environment once more. Number 4. For 25-year-old Andrew Deverts, June 18th of 2021 was supposed to be a calm and relaxing day. He had planned to do a short solo hike along the Pratt River Trail, which is around 3 miles long. Andrew had no way of anticipating that in just a few hours, his life would change forever. On the morning of June 18th, Andrew packed his bag with his water bottle, a thermos, 2 cans of Mountain Dew, and his notebook. Andrew hadn't told anyone where he was going, and had driven his car out to the North Bend Middle Fork trailhead. He got out of his car and headed down the trail, not knowing that it was possibly the last time he would ever do so. In the initial hours of his hike, everything went as planned, and Andrew's friends and family had no cause for concern. However, as night fell and there was no sign of Andrew, his girlfriend immediately panicked. She had no idea that he had gone out onto the Pratt River Trail and reported him missing to the police. A search for Andrew was on, and his car was quickly discovered at the North Bend Middle Fork trailhead, but there was no sign of Andrew. Inside of his car was a single can of SpaghettiOs that he was likely saving for after his hike. By June 22nd, the King County Sheriff's Office and search and rescue volunteers had descended upon the area, using volunteers and trained personnel to search for Andrew. His girlfriend made a gut-wrenching appeal on social media, asking for anyone with information to come forward. There was a lot of media attention around Andrew's disappearance, and even Reddit users began looking into the case. As the days wore on and there was no sign of Andrew, his family came to terms with the fact that they might never see him again. Then 9 days after Andrew mysteriously disappeared, another miracle happened. By this point, Andrew was becoming delusional due to a lack of food and water, and he managed to crawl back onto the Pratt River Trail through sheer luck. As he crawled on his hands and knees, 2 hikers found him and immediately called for help. When the authorities arrived at the scene, they were amazed to find that Andrew Devers had survived 9 days in the wilderness. Andrew's disappearance is perhaps one of the scariest missing person cases in recent times, but his sheer determination and mental strength are what carried him through his ordeal. He later told KIRO7 that he had survived thanks to wild berries and water, and that towards the end, he was also convinced that he wasn't going to make it. After being found by 2 hikers, Andrew was rushed to the hospital, and the missing person investigation was called off. Andrew was treated for dehydration and other injuries, and has since made a full recovery. Number 3. September 11th, 1965 was a somber day for Jackie Rains Crackman. The 18-year-old mother of 2 had just filed for divorce from her husband and was now trying to figure out where to go and how the rest of her life would pan out. Also in late September of 1965, the Rains family had just moved across town in Columbus, Ohio, leaving the Rain family with plenty to do and keep them busy. Jackie popped in to help whenever she could, but with a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, she was already extremely busy herself. By September 24th, the Rainses were beginning to get settled in their new home, with everyone helping out to unload suitcases and get everything ready in the house. But while the Rains were unpacking their suitcases, Jackie was doing the opposite. On September 24th, Jackie's little sister Sharon asked her father if she could go with her friend to see Jackie. Her father agreed, and Sharon and her friend rode off to her sister's house, bursting with excitement. However, when Jackie answered the door, her behavior was strange and she was seen packing 2 large suitcases. The last exchange the Rains had with Jackie was on that day, September 24th, when she told them that she was going to a wedding in Iowa and that she would be back in a few days. Unfortunately, what should have been a short trip quickly spiraled into a decades-long unsolved mystery, leaving Jackie's family heartbroken and without answers. Bizarrely, Jackie was not officially reported missing until 1994, and her siblings were told to not mention her disappearance to anyone. The mystery only gets deeper a month later. 30-year-old Melvin Upoff also disappeared under bizarre circumstances. Melvin was Jackie's ex-husband's boss, and for months, there had been rumors that Jackie and Melvin had been in a secret relationship. At one point, Myrna, Melvin's wife, alleged that Jackie's husband had told her about the affair, but the two continued to deny it. Myrna tried to live her life the best she could, but those rumors and accusations swirled in the back of her mind. Then, on October 24th, 1965, tragedy would strike the Upoffs. According to Myrna, she and Melvin had spent the day with the children rollerblading in Shelby before returning home. At around 11:30 p.m., Melvin told her that he was going for a beer in Shelby, but gave no reason as to why he was going back there when they had just left there hours earlier. Melvin kissed his wife goodbye and jumped into his 1954 blue and white Oldsmobile, never to be seen again. When the next morning came and there was no sign of Melvin, Myrna knew that something was wrong. All of Melvin's clothes and personal belongings were at home, and he hadn't called her to let her know he was okay or what was going on. It wasn't until many days later that Melvin was officially reported missing, although Myrna did attempt to file a report. For decades, the families of Jackie and Melvin clung to hope, with Jackie's mother believing that every Mother's Day, Jackie would walk through the front door and the two would finally be reunited. Both families never gave up searching for them, and even began their own investigations and hired private investigators to track down their missing loved ones. Then, in 2009, both families were hit with a shocking twist. Both Jackie and Melvin were found alive and well, living in Omaha, Nebraska. The two had been tracked down by an investigator who spoke with them via a phone call. Jackie and Melvin confirmed that they had disappeared together and were now living as a couple. The two do not wish to speak to the media and do not even wish to be reunited with their families. Jackie and Melvin have asked for privacy, and therefore there aren't many details as to how they were found, why they ran away, or why they don't want to speak to their families. The case of Jackie and Melvin is one of the most bizarre cases of missing people found decades later, and what is even stranger is that the pair want to remain silent about their motivations. Number 2. New Yorker Winston Bright was a happily married father of 3 with a good job and a good home. On October 12, 1990, he called his wife Leslie from work during his lunch break. This would be the last time that Leslie would ever see or hear from her husband again, or at least that's how the case appeared to be panning out. Winston's disappearance takes a bizarre and chilling turn, and decades later, Winston ended up resurfacing, dragging up the past with him. When Winston failed to return home from work, Leslie called the New York Police Department to report her husband missing. A report was filed, and the posters were distributed, but the case quickly ran cold. Nobody had seen or heard from Winston, and Leslie knew that this was out of character for her husband to just disappear, leaving behind their 3 children. The search for Winston carried on throughout the 90s, and by 2000, Winston had been declared deceased by the courts. This allowed Leslie to claim Winston's $300 pension to help support her and the children during this tough time. With Winston now declared deceased, many thought that this was the end of the story, and that they would likely never find out what happened to him. That was until 2010, when Leslie received a surprise knock at the door. Standing before her was her husband, who'd been declared deceased 10 years earlier, who now went by the name of Kwame Sekou. Winston told his wife that he'd suffered from amnesia and that he didn't remember much of the past 20 years, only that he found himself wandering around San Diego with no money and nowhere to go. He saw the name Kwame Sekou in a magazine and began building a new life around this new identity. Winston then went on to claim that as years went by, he was hit with flashes of memories and eventually stumbled across his missing person case on the internet. After contacting law enforcement and other groups, Winston visited his wife and asked for his pension to be transferred back to him. Leslie told CBC that she was upset that Winston wasn't interested in a reunion and that all he talked about was money. Unfortunately, Winston's children and other family members don't believe his story, with one of his only supporters being his mother. After battling through the court system, Winston provided a DNA test to prove that he really was Winston, and has since given up pursuing his pension. Number 1. On May 8, 2019, Amanda Eller grabbed her hiking gear and entered the Makawao Forest Reserve in Maui, Hawaii. Amanda had planned on embarking on a relaxing hike to help her unplug from the stresses of daily life. Amanda worked as a yoga teacher and physical therapist who was deeply in touch with her spiritual side and wanted to help others. Before entering the reserve, Amanda left her car in the car park and left her phone and keys inside. She then walked into the forest, not knowing the ordeal she was about to face. According to Amanda, she stopped to meditate on a log, but ended up falling asleep. When she woke up, she was disoriented and had forgotten her way, so she decided to keep pushing through the thick trees, hoping that she would be heading toward her car. After walking for miles, she quickly discovered that she was lost. She had no way of calling for help and knew that she had to find a way out. Meanwhile, her friends and family were becoming incredibly concerned for her well-being. In the last few decades, the incidence of people going missing in the wilderness has risen, giving way to the infamous 411 theory. When Amanda failed to return home or return her family's calls, she was reported missing and a search and rescue effort was put together. For 17 days, crews searched the Makawao Forest Reserve, hoping to find any sign of her. On day 17, a helicopter circling over an area saw a woman below them, frantically waving her arms. At this point, the pilots knew that they had just found Amanda Eller, safe and well. The crew coordinated her recovery, and within hours, she had been transported to the nearest hospital to be treated for her injuries. Amanda claimed that during those 17 days, she survived by eating berries and drinking from running streams and rivers. She also claimed to have slept in boars' dens and even eaten moths to survive. There are a few people out there who think that Amanda is not telling the whole truth about her situation, and some have even accused her of faking the disappearance in order to gain donations. Amanda's family are happy to have her home safe and well, and Amanda now uses her platform to warn others of the dangers of going into the wilderness unprepared. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.